bell ringeth. You ready, Steve? All right, just a reminder, we need to change the battery in this clicker before worship. Welcome back to Sunday morning Bible class. I'm standing in the wrong spot. We'll continue our study of Kingdom in Exile to Kingdom of Christ. We'll get there. Can you imagine being in Israel? We'll get there. I mean, as many years as it took, what did it take for the people who believed and trusted we are going to be back home, or we're going to be, Christ is coming? I mean, there's a lot of promises that they hung on to, and we just do it week by week, and it seems to have taken a good amount of time. We're, 4 months in? Something like that. So, anywho, so today we're going to do Ezra 7. I hope to get Ezra 8 in there also, but 7's got enough stuff that it seemed to be 7. So, I think you didn't finish 6 last week, actually, though, did you? Did you get to the end? Okay. Yeah, I knew there was a little bit there, and I didn't know if you covered or not. So we'll pick up in 7. Ezra 1 through 6 is the story of Zerubbabel, how he led God's people. He led them home, basically, to start building the temple. And that's the story of Zerubbabel. It picks up in Ezra 7. Ezra starts to be the leader of God's people. From the outside, I don't know why it wasn't the book of Zerubbabel, the book of Ezra, and the book of Nehemiah. I understand that the original text, Ezra and Nehemiah, are one book. You'll see them sometimes as Ezra-Nehemiah. So that continues. So the time of Zerubbabel is told by Ezra. The text with Ezra 7 through 10, it sounds different. It's I. The word I appears. And so Ezra actually comes into this. Then Nehemiah 1 through 7, Nehemiah leads God's people, and they start with the city walls. So that's where we're at in the whole scheme of this little pattern here. And as we know, we already left that and went to Haggai and Zechariah. So this is our timeline, anyways. So last week, Chuck discussed the time frame and possibilities with it. I stole his slide. This week's no different with the Persian king Artaxerxes. I stole his timeline thing here. You see Cyrus the Great. Cyrus the Great is when they left Babylon. They had the letter and it said, go home, start building the temple. Chuck says the time frames that with who's the Darius, this Darius and that Darius, and which is Ahasuerus versus Artaxerxes. So there's a time frame that this could have happened 520 BC, basically right at the end of just a short time after they returned from Babylon, or it could happen 120 years later.
The first year of Cyrus the Great.
Okay. So the first year of Cyrus. So which one? And Chuck picks the latter. Same thing with this, picks up with Artaxerxes. Is it Artaxerxes 1? Is it Artaxerxes 2? So then there's a gap of, if you look at the first time period, it could be a gap of 60 years. Start with the second time period, or it could be the second Artaxerxes, and it could be a 120-year gap. Depends on which you pick. It could be close together, it could be far apart. You're interested in that kind of stuff, figure it out.
Darius the second wasn't.
Darius the second to Artaxerxes the second, not a very long time. And Artaxerxes the second starts bumping up pretty close to the end of the Old Testament. You'll bump up to Malachi's time and stuff. So, anywho, where it falls, I'll let you make that decision. I'm not going to go any farther on it other than to say that it's highly contested. Kaufman points out these people believe one thing, these people believe the other. I've chosen this, so go with it. It's, historians, and it makes it true, but anyways, we'll focus more on what's in the text. Ezra 7 is where we're going to be today. Ezra sent to teach the people. In Ezra 7, verses 1 through 5, now after this, in the region of Artaxerxes, king of Persia, Ezra, the son of Seraiah, son of Azariah, son of Hilkiah, son of Shallum, son of Zadok, son of Ahitub, son of Amariah, son of Azariah, son of Marioth, son of Zerahiah, son of Uzi, son of Buki, son of Abishua, son of Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, the chief priest. So, some of those names, not too familiar, right? Some of those names are. So why do you think it's significant? What's the significance of beginning this section where Ezra comes into the chapter? What's the significance of beginning with the genealogy?
Because it goes back to Aaron.
Ah, very good. It proves of who Ezra is.
Queen.
We can. Jews would not, right? The Jews would not. They definitely would not. It's a chain of command, and we're going to see something in a little while where you need to see this person pass something to this person, and this person pass something to this person. It's kind of like the promise that we have. It started with Abraham, yet we hold on to some of that promise still today. How did it get here? And you can trace a lot of that lineage, how it goes. So that's where we're at. It's very important, especially like I say, Judaism was passed through a bloodline. So even the priesthood, you go back to Aaron. That's a priesthood. That's a bloodline. If you skip ahead to 7:14, you'll see a line that says, "For you are sent by the king and his 7 counselors to make inquiries about Judah and Jerusalem according to the law of your God, which is in your hand." So when we get to verse 14, what do we find that Ezra possesses? And obviously I forgot that I actually have candy to hand out, and not big granola bites or ravioli or whatever the occasion would have been. The law. Is it just written in his heart?
No, he was very skilled in it.
Sorry, Wanda. Did it hit the floor?
We can get it.
You get it?
I can get it with my foot.
All right.
Both of us said it, so we both get it.
Yeah. You gotta be fair.
Look at that. She caught that. Just sticks her hand out and just in it. They both done it? Okay. That's a good question, isn't it? Chuck asked the question, what did he have beyond the Torah? It says, according to the law of God, which is in your hand. We know he has the Torah, the first 5 books. He has Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus,
As far
Numbers,
as what the
Deuteronomy.
king and his 7 counselors want to inquire about.
Yeah, that's the guys from Babylon, from Persia actually, is who.
Little thing or whatever, the earthly thing.
We know he has the law. Does he have the books of history? They had to exist.
So representing the king and his 7 counselors.
Judges.
He probably could have had the old prophets up through Jeremiah.
Yeah, somebody had to have that stuff.
Somebody had to.
And the royal priesthood have been the people to have it. So you're right. I'm going to go with Chuck on this. I hadn't really thought about it, but he had more than just the law. He probably had, for us to have Jeremiah, for us to have the book of Daniel, for us to have Psalms,
Is that not where the Leviticans come in?
yeah, the books of law, number of, that would have been part of that too, yeah.
They were supposed to be the keepers of the tabernacle.
Yeah, they kept the tabernacle, so they would have definitely had the first 5 books. From there, I would say to get to this point, towards the end of the Old Testament, he had copies of this.
Once again, what king is it? Because all you have to do is picture yourself back then. What king and his counselors?
This king would have been Artaxerxes.
Yeah.
And we'll get that. We'll get back. We'll find out. That's who it is. So Ezra's actually in Babylon. He hasn't come back to Jerusalem yet. And he has this copy of God's word. He's kept it through the captivity. And as we look at the timeline, even longer than captivity, he's still got this. Hasn't really broke it out. So, coupled with his descendants from Aaron, how reliable would you consider this copy of the Torah to be? How reliable would whatever else that went with it, how reliable would that be?
I would give him the benefit of the doubt, especially since he's from the line of Aaron.
It's got to be as reliable as we got, right? It's our version has to
He
come.
planned it, right?
Yeah. God's Spirit, it's all God inspired, it's God breathed. We just traced him back to the priests. If Aaron had a copy and he passed it to his son and his son and his son, the copy he has may not be the same worn out piece of vellum, same worn out piece of papyrus, but he's listed later. We see that Ezra's listed as a scribe. They might have made a new copy, burned and buried the old one, but there are some, they say to theologists, I swear theologists study about God but don't know God. There's some people that say error can be introduced. For what? Why do you bring this stuff up? I guess I just brought it up too, but no, this is it. Chuck?
We just came off of in chapter 5 where God sent Haggai and Zechariah to say get started again and like that. You can see God through all this, particularly working with the Persian kings who were not known for their sensitivity and their compassion.
Right.
But here it is, the king is sending down Ezra as a priest. How much he did to make sure he was a bona fide priest, I don't know, but a priest to say, make sure it's being done according to your God. You think God would have made sure they would have had the right copy?
Right. Yeah, if I'm with you. And that's really where it gets to be. It's God saying that he's working with Persian kings. They recognize God and they recognize God's work, and he sends the appropriate people. The whole purpose of this chapter, when you get to the end of it, is you see God's hand in it. It wasn't some dude went back to Jerusalem and set something up. This is God makes this happen. So, all right. We looked at verse 1 through 5 was the genealogy. Picking back up in verse 6. This Ezra went up from Babylonia. He was a scribe, skilled in the law of Moses that the Lord, the God of Israel, had given. And the king granted him all that he asked, for the hand of the Lord, his God, was on him. So we'll get into some of this. Some of this is foreshadowing, so I'll just give you that. It's like watching TV today. You can see the end before you see how stuff unravels. So, how skilled in the law of Moses would you expect Ezra to be? Very, right? He's got to be the guy. He says he's a scribe, skilled in it. He's a descendant of Aaron. If anybody's going to be skilled in it, it's him. We'll get into what he asked Artaxerxes for. Artaxerxes being the king of Persia. But right now we know Artaxerxes' response. So what was his response and why?
The king granted him all that he asked.
He granted him all that he asked. What's that? No more candy. Mouthful. Okay.
The reason why is because that's the way God planned it.
God planned it. Sent the right messenger to the right person. Softened Artaxerxes' heart. Like Chuck pointed out, these guys are Persian kings. We'll later see they called themselves the King of Kings. Where we hear that name too. But if you're powerful enough to conquer great countries, great nations, if you're big enough to conquer the Babylonian Empire, having a soft spot in your heart, it ain't like he found a kitten in the street. It's just, this is God. This is God's thing. So he gives them, go ahead. Yeah, they were war with the Greeks, and the Greeks eventually win, right?
Yep.
The Greeks win that. There's got other stuff going on. For this to happen, it's got to be God. God's timing, God's people. Picking up verse 7. And there went up also to Jerusalem in the 7th year of Artaxerxes the king, some of the people of Israel, and some of the priests and the Levites, the singers and the gatekeepers and the temple servants. So Ezra is going to make this trip from Babylon to Jerusalem. If you take a direct route, it's 520 miles. Nobody goes direct route because it's probably like through a swamp and over a mountain, and to grandmother's house we go. So apparently the circuitous route is about 900 miles. That's how armies and large groups go, is this 900-mile thing. So he's going to make a 900-mile journey from Babylon to Jerusalem. Who would go with him?
The remnants.
What's that?
The remnants,
There's more than the remnant. The remnant went back earlier.
got singers, you got
You got the
gatekeepers.
priests, you got the Levites, you got the singers, the gatekeepers, and the temple servants. Everybody who works in the temple. So we got a temple going. Now we got the employees are showing up. You know, these people are showing up. It's kind of crazy. Whatever length of time it took, they weren't ready to be there yet. You know, the temple wasn't quite ready. We say that it gets ready by the end of Zerubbabel, right? It's ready, but it's not like the old temple, but it's
Into Darius, it was done.
6 years into Darius. Yeah, you're right.
Darius, it was done. Darius's was only, 12 years, 14 years? He wasn't a king that long, so it took a while.
It took a while.
People there that they needed.
It took a while, but it's finally done. It's finally done. So now we're going to bring these people back, and we're going to get busy. What would this tell us about the organization of the Jews during captivity? Maybe that question's not quite worded right.
We're still organized.
They're still organized, right? That's all I guess the answer I was looking for, to be honest. They're still organized. They still, what's that?
They're cohesive.
They're cohesive. The religion is still there. They still know them as priests. They're still acknowledged as priests. They weren't people who were formerly priests. They're not the grandsons of people who were formerly priests. They're priests.
Promise here, he said he was going to beat them up, but he'd still keep them cohesive, like you said.
Keep them loose. You got the temple, and they're going to bring back people who, you think you're going to have to retrain them? No. They're not going to need to be retrained. They got their jobs, and they got their skills, just like Ezra, the scribe, had his Torah. These people are going to come back and work.
Fresh up, if they didn't.
That's right. That's right. We shall sing the song of the temple servant to refresh our minds as we walk back. So, yeah, that would have been quite you got plenty of time. Plenty of trip to get there. So anyways, they're coming back. Verse 8 and 9, and Ezra came to Jerusalem in the 5th month, which was in the 7th year of the king. For on the first day of the 1st month he began to go up from Babylonia, and on the first day of the 5th month he came to Jerusalem. For the good hand of God was on him. That's a long ways to say, how long did it take for them to get from Babylon to Jerusalem?
First day of the 1st month, first day of the 5th month, so it took them basically 4 months.
Basically 4 months.
So 120 days.
120 days, roughly. I don't know, well, months are months. I don't know if they get 28-day months or what, but we're in Ezra 30, the 1230s and 5 days of festival or something. So anyways, so it took them 4 months. It's close enough. You got them there on 4 months to make that 900-mile journey. So why include such details? Why include such thing? I mean, like that. Even if they just said, it took them 4 months to get there. No, it's like it happened in this year of this king. It started on the first day of this month and the 5th day of this month and the first day of the 5th month. Why include all this stuff?
Is there like a festival or something? I'd have to,
Proofs in the details.
it's something to do with the way they say the months.
There is something to do with the way they say months. But yeah, really, it's just, it keeps all the details. It's a legal record at this point. This is kind of really what it is. It's a recording of how we got here. And also for the details of, for the good hand of God was on him. That's just more proof that, that this happened this way. It wasn't just, did it happen? Verse 10, for Ezra had set his heart to study the law of the Lord and to do it, and to teach the statutes and rules in Israel. What was Ezra's goal of returning to Israel?
And teach.
Obey and teach. I like that. His job it is obey and teach. Teach to get more people to obey. So yeah, he's got that. He studied it. He's ready to go back to his people. He's been with his people, but he's going to the people that are over there. Oops, sorry. In verse 11, this is a copy of the letter that King Artaxerxes gave to Ezra the priest, the scribe, a man learned in manners of the commandments of the Lord and his statutes for Israel. We know from earlier that King Artaxerxes granted Ezra everything that he asked for. We're blessed with a copy of that letter, authorization, and it starts in the next verse. In Ezra 5 and 6, we saw Darius searching the archives for an earlier decree of Cyrus. Just chucked up that part last week. It's like, did that really happen? Search the archives. And they went to this library, and they went to this library, and they found it, right? They pulled it out. Sure enough, Cyrus said, go back and take all this stuff. We don't have to look for it. This letter is here. It's included in God's scripture. They ain't going to have to look for this one a second time. So, starting in verse 12, and I'll go ahead and say the footnote there first. In Ezra 7, 12 through 26, the letter from Artaxerxes is recorded in Aramaic rather than the usual Hebrew. Why do you care? Who knows? Ain't nothing lost to translation there, even though we don't speak Aramaic. But yeah, it's authentic. You'll find Aramaic in certain places in the Bible. Anybody know where you can find some places that are in Aramaic? Give me an example. The Jews spoke that. That was one of their common day languages, right? They spoke Aramaic. They spoke Greek.
Jesus did.
What's that? Jesus spoke it. Some of the stuff that he said is still in our Bibles as Aramaic. We speak it.
Written in Aramaic.
Algebra.
That's Arabic. Algebra. It's Arabic. And ironically, I learned algebra from an Arab. So, yeah, he took very great pride in that. So, and he should. He should. Yeah, some of Jesus' things. Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani is in Aramaic. So we know that, and it translates it. A couple things he said was that way. The book of Daniel, a lot of it's written in Aramaic. There's a big chunk from here to here, and I don't know where the chunk is. That one is definitely, the handwriting on the wall is in Aramaic. So a lot of that is in Aramaic. Prophecy, the stuff in Daniel is prophecy, and it's written in apocalyptic language. So, anyways, we see a little bit of Aramaic. Typically, the New Testament is written in Greek, and the Old Testament is written in Hebrew. You'll find some Aramaic in there. So verse 12 says, Artaxerxes, king of kings, to Ezra the priest, the scribe of the law of the God of heaven, peace. What was Artaxerxes' title? King of kings. Anybody like that title?
I'm not sure you
Who
did.
said it?
We said it together.
You guys said it together? All right. One for each of you. One Wanda played softball as a youngster, and one Wanda did not. All right. King of Kings is also used to describe Jesus. You'll see it in 1 Timothy 6:15. It also appears on the robe of the rider of the white horse, in Revelation 19:16. I think most people take that to be Christ. Some people take him to be the Antichrist. I didn't go deeper into it, but it appears on his robe, King of Kings. How does Artaxerxes, the King of Kings, address Ezra? Yep, peace. I like that, peace. He picked that up from the Jews, didn't he? That's their hello. That's their welcome sign or their hello sign. Peace be to you, shalom. Actually, that word, if you get into it, that word right there is kind of controversial in the text of what it is and what it means. And anyways, he acknowledges him, the scribe of the law, the God of heaven. You're going to be King of Kings. You're also a God yourself. But you're acknowledging the God of heaven. It's a big thing. Verse 13, and now I make a decree that anyone of the people in Israel or their priests or Levites, in my kingdom who freely offers to go to Jerusalem may go with you. So we saw earlier that the priests and the Levites are going to go with him. This is authorization. If you want to go, head on out. What condition do we see put on the priests and Levites that are going?
They have to want to.
You gotta want to, right? Ezra can't twist arms. He can't throw chains on them and drag them back. If you want to go, go. You know what your job is. You know where you're heading. If you want to go, go. Verse 14, for you are sent by the king and his 7 counselors to make inquiries about Judah and Jerusalem, according to the law of your God, which is in your hand. We saw this verse earlier. So what is Artaxerxes sending them to do?
See how things are going according to the law.
See how things are going? Yeah, according to the law over in Jerusalem. So you're going to get there and it says, you're going to see how things are going. According to the law, not just how things are going. We've already looked at some of the systems work going on there. We've already looked at, the stoppage on the work on the temple and what it took to get that back going and finished. So how about the people? What's the state of your people there? Judge against your law, your God's law. Don't just see how they're doing monetarily or struggling. How are they doing against God's law? That's what it kind of really means, to make inquiries about them calling the law of your God. Why would a king of Persia be interested in that?
They have enough written about this God. You don't want to upset this God.
No. Yeah, I want to make sure he's over there and he's happy over there. If he's happy with you, we're happy with you. You make sure that he's happy over there. I think that's part of it. Yeah, we know what he can do. We see that as early as Joshua, when the spies come into Canaan, and Rahab. Well, I heard about you guys. I heard about your God. I heard how he parted the Red Sea. It got to places like that. The word's there. Verse 15 and 16, and also to carry the silver and gold that the king and his counselors have freely offered to the God of Israel, whose dwelling is in Jerusalem, with all the silver and gold that you shall find in the whole province of Babylonia, with the free will offerings of the people and the priests, vowed willingly for the house of their God that is in Jerusalem. So they're instructed to carry silver and gold. Where would it come from? What would it be used for? Where did the silver and gold come from?
Beginning of when you go back to
This
the
is another-
Babylonians.
This is another batch.
Might be just God returning what belongs to him in the first place.
There's a little bit of that too. A little bit of it is he's going to return some stuff that belonged to God. This is going to come from the treasury. That comes in a minute. It says the free will offerings. They're going to hit the people up one more time. Collect another one. Hey, we're going back to Jerusalem. Who wants to kick in? So yeah, the first of verse 15. You're going to carry the silver and gold that the king and his counselors are dipping out in their pockets. Here, take this with you, So the Persians are kicking in. Then it says the priests and the people are going to kick in. It's all going to go back for the house of God. It's all going to go back for the temple.
Journey with all this gold and silver in that environment
No.
and not getting hit.
Yeah, exactly. The perils. I think chapter 8 talks about the perils of the journey. I think it gets into that. So this talks about, that's part of the thing of why it's 520 miles, but they go 900. And the perils of the journey show up in verse 8. But you're right. You're carrying big bucks. And we're going to get into some of that stuff. Yeah, it's amazing that they didn't get robbed, drop in place, catch dysentery on the Oregon Trail, whatever. So, verse 17, With this money then you shall with all diligence buy bulls, rams, and lambs with their grain offerings and their drink offerings, and you shall offer them on the altar of the house of your God that is in Jerusalem. So what was the money specifically earmarked for? It's going to the house.
Buy stuff to offer.
It's going to buy sacrifices.
State the sacrifices.
And I'm glad they didn't, might have been touch out carry all that gold and silver, but I think they're probably glad they didn't have to bring back bulls, rams, and lambs on a 900-mile journey. So yeah, it's going to all go towards offerings. We think about the blood sometimes, but we forget about the grain offerings. We forget about the drink offerings. This is all going to happen. Take all this, buy it. Whatever seems good to you and to your brothers to do with the rest of the silver and gold, you may do according to the will of your God. So after they buy these sacrifices, Ezra is instructed to do what?
Seems good.
Whatever seems good. Kind of open-ended thing there, isn't it?
Sounds like a good boss, actually.
It is. Yeah, I like that answer too. When you read stuff like the 7 habits of highly effective people and stuff, some of that is give the people.
Going to buy a sandwich and they say keep the change.
Yeah. So what do you do with the change? Maybe lay it on the table for the next guy. I know some of the restaurants here in town have the pay it forward thing. But some of this is according to the will of your God. That's the kicker there. Don't just spend it on whatever, but according to the will of your God. Verse 19, the vessels that have been given for you for the service of the house of your God, you shall deliver before the God of Jerusalem. Oh yeah, these vessels. They were taken from the Old Temple. We last saw these, I believe, King Belshazzar's grand party in Daniel 5. That's where the handwriting on the wall happened, right? Mene, Tekel, Parson. I always get that wrong. My kids know. But that's where we last saw them. They're having a good party with these things. Somehow they've been, I would assume, be washed and put away. They're put away for many years. But they're ready to go back to where they belong. Verse 20, whatever else is required for the house of your God, which it falls to you to provide, you may provide it out of the king's treasury. Chuck already mentioned the king's treasury. Is this a blank check? Yeah. So the king of Persia, the king of kings, the grandest king in the world at that point, has written them a blank check to take care of whatever needs taken care of.
Darius says, from all the taxes you collect in that region, you're going to pay for it. Artaxerxes says, I'm going to pay for it out of the treasury from all the money I bring in from all the provinces.
Yeah, we're going to start out with seed money.
Much bigger bank.
Much bigger, yeah. The empire's taxes are going to start funding this. Much bigger bank. Verse 21 and 22, and I, Artaxerxes the king, make a decree to all the treasurers in the province beyond the river, which is Babylon. Not Babylon, but Persia. Whatever Ezra the priest, the scribe of the law of the God of heaven requires of you, let it be done with all diligence. Up to 100 talents of silver, 100 cores of wheat, 100 baths of wine, 100 baths of oil and salt, without prescribing how much. He's got a limit. He says it's going to whatever you need out of the treasury, but he's got a limit. 100 talents, like 75 pounds. So 7,500 pounds of silver is that part of it. That's a lot of silver. What's silver right now? $30 an ounce? There's a troy ounce, there's like 13 ounces per pound. A lot of money, whatever you want to look at it. Some historians believe this is about a third of Persia's income, their revenue. So that's how much it's worth. In the empire, it's a third in there. Here, just take it.
The Bible, the regular history backs it up.
Correct.
Good.
Let me say that regular history backs it up. So, everything in the world's documented. I would say you'll find that to be documented. I didn't find a big star next to it. Yeah. Verse 23, whatever is decreed by the God of heaven, let it be done in full for the house of the God of heaven, lest his wrath be against the realm of the king and his sons. Artaxerxes even included his rationale for sending Ezra, priests and Levites, and a grand gift to honor the God of a nation they conquered. So what's his reason? Lest his wrath be against my kingdom. No, don't want him mad. So yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. Did you expect this? A lot of these people think they're above God. A lot of these people don't, he's acknowledging the God of a country, a nation that he conquered. There's no rationale why he would do this other than God touching him. We also notify you that it shall not be lawful to impose tribute, custom, or toll on any one of the priests, the Levites, the singers, the doorkeepers, the temple servants, or other servants of this house of God. So it's like the commercial. But wait, there's more. And a set of Ginsu knives. Who shall be exempt from taxation? The Levites, the priests, all the people of the temple. And it's not just taxation. I mean, it says tribute, customs. You're bringing in something from somewhere else. You don't have to go through the duty-free shop anymore. You're just okay. No tolls. You cross the bridge with the billy goat's gruff. You're okay. Don't pay the toll. Just keep on going, right? This is a big decree. How long does this exemption last?
Forever.
Yeah, forever. Believe it or not, it exists forever. It just, or at least till the end of the kingdom. Till the kingdom first is gone, this sticks. So that's a big deal. When they pay for everything with taxation, that you guys are exempt. Verse 25, and you, Ezra, according to the wisdom of your God that is in your hand, appoint magistrates and judges who may judge all the people in the province beyond the river. All such as know the laws of your God. Those who do not know them, you shall teach. What governmental authority does Artaxerxes give Israel over Israel?
To appoint leaders.
Yeah. So he becomes kind of like the governor of the area. Ezra's kind of the governor. You're going to appoint magistrates. You're going to appoint judges. You're going to appoint leaders. The government of Israel will be your responsibility. What authority does he give the Mosaic Law?
It's the standard.
That's the standard. It ain't going to be Persian law that's the standard. It's God's law. It's the standard. That's what they'll be measured by. That's what will be upheld. And it's expected. What should be done with someone who doesn't know the Mosaic Law?
You got to teach them.
Teach them. Don't let them be ignorant. Teach them. What kind of person would it take to have such authority and expect them to use it appropriately? What's that?
A person like Ezra.
Person like it? Look at that. There's the double piece of candy answer of smart aleck answers right there.
You might as well get them
That
all
is a
back.
Chuck White level answer right there. Someone like Ezra. That's a
Give them
great
that.
answer. right
She
there.
doesn't speak up, I speak up for her.
Oh. I like that answer. Someone like Ezra, because that's exactly what it is. He's got the bloodline, he's got the scribeness, he's got the study, he's got all this stuff.
Right person.
God
I
would
assume he would, because he
God would
knows,
pick
he
the right
knows
person.
how he makes us.
Yeah.
You know, it all fits together.
God uses people, but you're right, he put the right guy in his place. It'd be absolutely a special person to be right. Which is amazing when you consider go through the time of Judges. You go through the time of the split kingdom. People leading were not always the people they should have been. There were some bad kings. People did some weird things. But he has somebody out of his remnant, out of the remnants of remnants.
Ezra was determined in his heart to do all that was right.
Right.
God's life.
He was determined in his heart to do what was right. We've kept this, we've kept this law. We've kept this book. We're ready to use it. Verse 26, whoever will not obey the law of the God, of your God, and the law of the king, let judgment be strictly executed on him. whether for death or for banishment or confiscation of his goods or for imprisonment. If somebody disobeys the law of God,
You could do lots of stuff. You can execute them, get the
Do what you need to do.
You can confiscate his stuff.
there's zero tolerance. And it really points to do it swiftly. It ain't take 25 years to put the guy in the electric chair. Yeah. Virgin philosophy. Just take care of business, get it done.
Take them out.
Ezra's commission from Artaxerxes includes some temporary provisions. Permission for all Israelites who decided to do so got to go with Ezra to Jerusalem. That was a one-time thing. Permission to carry the monetary gifts. Permission to draw upon the royal sub-treasury, large grants. Permission to convey to Jerusalem all the money that Ezra might have received from area-wide funding effort. And a royal mandate to inquire concerning Judah and Jerusalem. This comes from Kaufman's commentary. Anyways, these are temporary provisions. There's some permanent ones too. Ezra's been endowed with the chief authority over all the satrapy beyond the river, with power to appoint magistrates and judges, and to require their knowledge of the Mosaic law. He was empowered to enforce the decisions by penalties of fines, imprisonment, banishment, and death. And a permanent status of tax exemption was granted on the entire religious community. So those are permanent. 27 and 28, we switch back to the Hebrew for those who've been keeping track. Blessed be the Lord, the God of your fathers, who put such a thing as this into the heart of the king, to beautify the house of the Lord that is in Jerusalem, who extended to me his steadfast love before the king and his counselors, before all the king's mighty officers. I took courage, for the hand of the Lord my God was on me. I gathered leading men from Israel to go up with me. These verses return to being recorded in Hebrew. Ezra acknowledges God's hand in all of this. Is that it? That's it. Ezra acknowledges God's hand in every bit of this. So that's really the key. So next week, I think Mr. Brent was sandbagging that. I think he was waiting for me to be done. So anyways, Ezra 8. It's the details of the journey next week. There's 10 chapters in Ezra. So hang on. It will be exciting from here. So anyways, thank you all for joining me. Thanks for eating the candy. We're always thankful you're here, and we're thankful that you speak up. Makes our job so much easier. So thank you.
Sing the wondrous song.